Hello everybody, my name is Necroxis. Today I'm answering your questions that you had about the World of Warcraft Chronicle, which came out last week on Tuesday. I know some of you don't have it, and so I asked in a video what specific questions you might have, and I got some specific questions. I got some very vague questions. I'm going to try and answer all of them as succinctly as possible, but I don't know how long this video is going to end up, and just like spoiler alert for all of the things in the Chronicle. Also, spoiler alert, this video is unedited. I have very little notes. There's probably not going to be a lot of cutting. So, if you're ready for a rambling video where I go on tangents, this is the one for you. Also, this is the second attempt at me trying to record this. I tried to record it last night. I spent about 90 minutes. I think I'm going to pare that down because I got most of my points written down now. The big points that I wanted to make, but last night I spent an hour and a half doing this only for the audio to be corrupted and not work. So, second time's a charm. Alright, so I got, let's see, I received 16 questions, and I'm just going to read them in order of when they came in, the earliest first. So, number one is from Devlin Cahill. You definitely are familiar to me, but I don't know how to pronounce that. In parentheses, you have Greyjoy, so whatever. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. He asks, what is my favorite bit of new lore from the Chronicles? Interesting that the first question I get is about the new lore and what I like, because as you're going to find out listening to this, and then the next video that I'm going to make later on this week, there's a lot of retcons in this that I'm not a fan of. So I like to start out with a bit of things that I did like. So there are a lot of... My problems with Chronicle are really very similar, almost the same as my problems with Warlords of Draenor, as in, there's a lot of really, really good, small, focused, beginning and end stories, like really small scale stories that are phenomenal, and that's my favorite bit of new lore. But my problem is, the overarching big narrative, I think is really stupid, and I'll explain more about that when I talk about Sargeras and all of that shenanigans. But so my favorite bit of new lore is a small contained storyline, and this is new information that we just learned, and it is actually about how Crystal Song Forest became Crystal Song Forest. So, in the Chronicle, which I have down here, I have notes, as you could probably see, all those tabs of notes. But Crystal Song Forest is interesting because it's not even like a page long, the story of it, but I think it's really fascinating. So, I'll probably just tell the whole story. So, before we get to the actual events, we have to do a little bit of setup. So right now, let's imagine that it's before the War of the Ancients. Kalimdor is still the massive, big continent. Let's see if I can find a picture of it really quick. Here we go. This is from the inside of the page. Kalimdor is still this. Azshara is still currently ruling, and she's basically like, hey, my kingdom is awesome. We're so great. Let's start expanding. So we have people expanding like down here and over there, and there's a bunch of Night Elves that decide to expand about right here, up in what would become Northrend. So basically that's happening. They establish a town or an area in a forest, or near a forest, and they name that town Shandaral. And so now, cut to the War of the Ancients has happened. All the shenanigans are going on. The Well of Eternity gets exploded to stop Sargeras by Malfurion, and basically the continent split apart. The Sundering has occurred. We have the Eastern Kingdoms, we have Kalimdor, we have Pandaria, we have Northrend, we have the Broken Isles somewhere in between there. Unlike the Night Elves, who have been rejecting Well of Eternity, the arcane magic in the Well of Eternity has like seals placed over it on Hyjal, and unlike the the High Elves in Eastern Kingdoms who have the Sunwell, the elves who got stuck in Northrend, in Shandaral, they have no arcane magic to draw upon because, like most Night Elves or Highborn who practiced arcane magic, they were addicted to the arcane magic of the Well of Eternity. So, the Highborn who get stuck in Shandaral are basically like, we have no arcane magic, what are we going to do? We don't have a Well of Eternity, we don't have a Sunwell, we are succumbing to our addiction, what can we possibly do? And they notice that around the area, there are a lot of blue dragons. And what these blue dragons are doing is that they're crystallizing parts of the forest, some creatures, parts of the land, and they're drawing the energy out of the crystals that was drawn into them when they crystallized them. And the blue dragons weren't doing this because they wanted arcane magic or because they were addicted. They were doing it because they were experimenting. And just a little bit of a sidebar here, we're already going off topic, so why not? One of the cool things about Chronicle is they mentioned several examples of how the blue dragonflight not only are the stewards of magic on Azeroth, and not only are they supposed to protect like the ley lines of Azeroth and protect magic from being misused, but this is from the beginning too. This isn't new information, but for like the first time, I feel like we're seeing blue dragons experimenting with magic. And that was one of the things that Norgannon, when he blessed Malygos, I'm hitting my mic out of passion. When Norgannon blessed Malygos with the ability to control the leylands of Azeroth with the Arcanonomicon and be able to be a master of magic, one of the things was the blue dragonflight were also supposed to be experimenting with magic. And this is like the Chronicle, I think. There's little hints and pieces of them doing that in Wrath of the Lich King. There's kind of implications of that, although their storyline is more about the war against magic users. But Chronicle, I think, is the first time we see multiple examples of the blue dragonflight experimenting with magic. So this is what they're doing in Shandaral, in Northrend, in around the area that would become Crystal Song Forest. Because right now it's just a regular forest, with Shandaral, the Night Elven city nearby. So the Highborn, who are addicted to arcane magic and are going through withdrawal, my dog's going to be barking because he can't help himself. They see the blue dragons, and they're seeing them do this, and they're like, man, wouldn't it be great if we could figure out how to do that so we can take that arcane magic from those crystals and feed our addiction. And so they come to the blue dragons, and they're like, yo, can you teach us how to do this? And the blue dragons' response is either ignoring them or outright attacking them because they don't care that mortals want to learn their magic and they just want to be left alone. So the elves around Shandaral are getting more and more desperate. Their addiction is not getting cured. They have no arcane source to take it from. So what they decide to do, in an act of desperation, they're going to go attack the Nexus, which is where the blue dragons are all held up, steal a bunch of their artifacts, steal a bunch of their magic, learn how to do the spell to crystallize stuff and drain the arcane energy out. So they attack the Nexus, they steal all of this stuff, they learn how to do the spell, and they leave. They successfully do this. The blue dragonflight then goes berserk because they're like, holy shit, our sanctum where we're hoarding all of this magical stuff, which is our charge from the Titans, it was just stolen by a bunch of mortals. They're learning how to do our magic. We gotta go after them. So the elves return to Shandaral, and they know that the blue dragonflight's coming for them. They saw how angry they got. They know they're coming. So that they have to prepare somehow to defend against this. And so the blue dragons end up sending, I believe it said, it was, let's see, it was a bunch of dragons, actually. Blah, 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 blah. Dozens of blue dragons, and that's a lot. Like, if you just imagine in World of Warcraft, like, fighting just Nefarian and how powerful he is, imagine, like, 20, 30, or 40 of them. So, the blue dragonflight sends a bunch of dragons at Shandaral, and they're like, we gotta take care of these elves, because how dare they do this? And so the Night Elves are freaking out, but they formulate a plan. They're going to use the spell that they just stole to crystallize stuff, instead of not as each individuals, but they're going to channel all of their magic together at once and cast the same spell to crystallize a chunk of the forest, absorb the arcane energy out of it, and then use it to fight the blue dragonflight. So that's their plan. So they gather on a cliff overseeing Moonsong Forest, is the forest what it was called. I forgot to mention that. They gather on a cliff over Moonsong Forest, and as the dragons are coming, the Highborn sorcerers focus their power, hoping to crystallize a portion of the forest and use its energies. And what happens? Kaboom! The spell backfires. All of the Night Elves die instantly. They just vaporize into arcane magic. A great way to explain this is if you've read Jaina Proudmoore, Tides of War. When the arcane bomb hits Theramore, there are a bunch of people who are there who die, and the way they die is they basically, like, explode into, like, arcane mist. And that's basically what happened here. Literally 100% of the elves immediately, instantly die. They all become arcane dust, scatter across the winds, but the spell has trapped their ghosts there. the blue dragons saw them beginning to do this spell, and they were like, fuck this, and they all just get out of there. So none of them die. But the entire forest of Moonsong then crystallizes and becomes Crystal Song Forest. So that is why in Northrend and Wrath of the Lich King, the forest is all weirdly crystallized. That's why there's night elven ghosts all over the place. And that is why there are blue dragons like on the periphery of their, like, just doing things. Once again, the greed of mortals ends up proving their own doom. All of Shandaral is destroyed. The entire city is basically gone. That's why there's a bunch of ruins of night elven buildings there. That's why their ghosts are stuck there. The spell tied their spirits to the land of Azeroth. And I'll read the last sentence. Their spirits, although warped by powerful spells, were left intact, cursed to mindlessly wander the haunted land that would become known as Crystal Song Forest. That was just really great. There's also a fantastic picture that goes along with this. Let me see if I can show it. It's the blue dragon flight attacking the elves, and they're using the spell right before they all get annihilated. And none of the blue dragon flight actually died. They all got out of there, and that's how Crystal Song Forest came to be. That's my favorite bit of lore. There are like 3 or 4 or 5 stories like this that expand upon stuff that we've already seen in the game that are really, really good, and I like them a lot, and I'm going to mention them a little bit later. But I think that's my favorite one because it was so out of left field. Like, I knew we were going to explore the origins of the Tauren and the Tonka and the Yongol. Excuse me. And I knew that we were going to learn more information about Princess Theridass and Saronite and Yogg-Saron. But Crystal Song Forest, like, just came out of nowhere, and I thought it was really, really fascinating. I like how they explained why there were night elves there. And that is my favorite piece of new information from Chronicle. All right, so that was the first question. We're already 12 minutes in, so it's going to be a long video again, I guess. All right, number 2 is from Simon Loke. This is more of a cynical question, but I want to take it nonetheless because I want to vent a little bit. He asked, tell me more what Blizzard has fucked up besides the demons transcending all realities. All right, so there's another question down the line, my 11th question on this list, from Anvo-chan, and he also asked, what are your 3 pieces of new lore that you like and hate the most? That you like and hate the most. So I'm just going to do those 2 at once, basically. So what I love, the story of Crystal Song Forest that I just relayed, Princess Theridass's origin, which I'm going to explain later when we do the Tauren question. But the third one, and I guess I'll explain it now as well, is Fandral Staghelm basically saving the world. So this is after the Sundering has already happened. The old gods have been imprisoned in their prisons deep beneath the earth. Y'Saraj is already dead. Yogg-Saron's imprisoned in Northrend. N'Zoth is imprisoned somewhere. It's implied it's near where Tirisfal Glades is, but that's not what was under Tirisfal Glades. It's like around that area. It technically should be like where Ocean is right now on the map. And then Cthulhu is imprisoned in Ankh-Karash. So the Sundering basically like put a crack in the old gods' prisons. And Yogg-Saron, see, it's funny because the story of Saronite is one of my favorites, one of my 3. But the way they changed Yogg-Saron is one of the things that I hate. So I guess I'll try to explain this at the same time. What they basically did was take away all of the interesting things that Cthulhu and N'Zoth did, for the most part. Cthulhu still manipulated the Akir into becoming the Silithid, or into becoming the Karaji and all that shenanigans. But they took away the Emerald Dream's initial corruption from N'Zoth and credited it to Yogg-Saron. Now, in their defense, there is a vague statement when they're explaining this, saying that even though Yogg-Saron was the first one who discovered the Emerald Dream, the other old gods could then access it too. But they changed the Emerald Dream and the implication of the Emerald Nightmare from being just a N'Zoth thing. Like, this was what N'Zoth did. He corrupted Deathwing, and he did the Emerald Nightmare. There's literally one sentence about N'Zoth in this book, and it basically is just a sentence that explains N'Zoth got imprisoned with the other old gods. That is literally the entire thing they explain about N'Zoth. I don't know why they didn't expand his story. Maybe they're going to do that in Legion or the next expansion and they didn't want to ruin it, but for a book that's supposed to explain all the things, and this is one of my main complaints, there's a lot of things that they don't explain. And what N'Zoth is, what N'Zoth looked like, what N'Zoth was doing, where N'Zoth was located, what he's been doing since the Sundering happened and their prisons are weakened. None of that's in the book. So, Yogg-Saron, basically, when Cthulhu is like just chilling in Ahn'Qiraj, being like, I'm going to manipulate all these Akir and make all these bug monsters, Yogg-Saron's thinking like much bigger terms. He's basically thinking, hey, my prison is now not entirely secure. I can kind of spread my influence throughout the world. He begins influencing Loken, and he ends up causing Loken to fight against the other keepers, and he's spreading Saronite throughout Northrend. But what we discover is that Yogg-Saron's influence is so widespread that he's actually spreading Saronite to Kalimdor and the Eastern Kingdoms. Saronite's cropping up as far south as the Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor. And at this point, this is after the Sundering, so the Night Elves are like pretty powerful still. I mean, the world exploded, but so the Druids are like, oh my god, what are we gonna do? Because this Saronite is corrupting everything. The land's being corrupted, animals are being corrupted, people are being corrupted. Holy shit, what are we gonna do? So Fandral Staghelm, leader of the Cenarian Circle, basically is like, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to snip 6 pieces off of the World Tree, Nordrassil, and I'm going to go and plant them throughout the world. And what this is going to do is it's going to cleanse the land of this Saronite and the old gods. And he ends up, I forgot to actually write this down. I know most of the places that he went, but there were some that I had forgotten. Fandral Staghelm, 122. So yeah, it's actually, it's the story right after Crystal Song in the Chronicle. I actually forgot about that. Upon discovering Saronite, a small group of druids, but not all of them, decided to eradicate the Saronite. And they reasoned that the life-giving energies of the World Tree could heal the lands around Mount Hyjal, then other World Trees could do the same around the world. Some of the druids told Fandral to be like, yo dog, you probably should go get the blessings of the aspects before you do this, like we did with Nordrassil. But he was like, there's not enough time for me to do that. Saronite was spreading throughout Northrend and even other parts of the world. Rather than waste time, he decided to just do this without consulting the aspects or even the rest of the Cenarian Circle. So like I said, he takes 6 of the 6 clippings off of the World Tree and he plants them in various places. He plants them in Ashenvale, Crystal Song Forest, Feralus, Duskwood, the Hinterlands, or places that would become known as that, because all of those weren't called that yet. And then finally he plants one more in Northrend near the Grizzly Hills. And the Grizzly Hills one is like a separate thing that I'll explain a little bit later. But what this does is the great trees grow. The 4 great trees of Ashenvale, Feralus, Duskwood, and the Hinterlands, where if you played in vanilla, you fought the Green Dragon bosses there. Those trees grew into what they become, and they succeeded. They cleansed the land of the Saronite, and Saronite was freed from Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor. Fandral Staghelm successfully saved Kalimdor and the Eastern Kingdoms. The one in Crystal Song Forest also did the same thing. That's really not that important, but the one in Grizzly Hills is the special one, and the one in Grizzly Hills was the one they wanted to grow into another world tree. And this tree initially was called Andrassil. And basically what happened was they planted the tree, Saronite stopped spreading, and wildlife began to flourish. Malfurion and the rest of the circle were really pissed off that he did this, but they agreed that Saronite being stopped was a good thing, so they left. But when they decided to return and see what was going on, things had changed. The Tonka and the forest nymphs of the area were fighting each other. And then the Cenarian Circle decided to send a bunch of druids there to see what had happened. And what had happened were Andrassil's roots, again, this is the tree in the Grizzly Hills, Andrassil's roots were so powerful and dug so deeply into the earth that they pierced Yogg-Saron's prison. And the second that happened, Yogg-Saron was like, yes, my time is now. So he began corrupting the shit out of Andrassil. And because Andrassil was a attempt at a world tree, it was connected to the Emerald Dream. So that is the moment that Yogg-Saron discovers there's this other plane of existence known as the Emerald Dream, and is like, yo, Cthulhu and N'Zoth, I just found this really cool thing. If y'all want to get some access to it, I know how to do it. And so they all start to spread their seeds of corruption throughout the Emerald Dream, and that eventually becomes the Emerald Nightmare. So, ultimately, to cap off this story, because the part that I liked was that Fandral Staghelm actually saved the Eastern Kingdoms in Kalimdor. But to cap off this little tangent, basically what the Cenarian Circle did, they decided that, look, we have to destroy this world tree. So they did. With all their mightiest druids, they came and destroyed Andursil, and it crashed onto the ground, and that is why it looks like that in Wrath of the Lich King. And they decided to rename Andursil, to Vordrasil, which stands for Broken Crown. So, there you go. Yogg-Saron had used the tree planted by Fandral Staghelm as a doorway into the Emerald Dream, and to spread his corruption and the other old gods into Ysera's realm, and this would be the beginning of the Emerald Nightmare. So I really like this story because Fandral Staghelm is a really fascinating character to me. I actually really, really like him, and I was kind of bummed at how he got ultimately treated and killed in 4.2 in the Firelands, because there aren't that many characters in World of Warcraft who I would consider multi-layered with different quirks to their personality, and someone who's not just a completely pure good character or a completely pure evil character. There are a lot of characters like that, but there are not many who ride that line where they can be good or evil and they have their own personality. That is why Wrathion is like my favorite character in the lore, besides my favorite villain, which is Gul'dan. He's my favorite character, but Wrathion would be second. That's why I like when Jaina Proudmoore got corrupted or changed her personality, because I think it's much more interesting when you have characters who are more realistic. There's very few people in the actual world who are 100% evil or 100% good. I mean, there's stories of Mother Teresa being a terrible person, and there's stories of Hitler actually being pretty decent in certain areas. We still all agree that Mother Teresa was a good person and Hitler was an evil person, but nobody is 100% good or 100% evil. So that's why I really like Fandral Staghelm. Another person that fits this list, I would argue, is Vanessa Van Cleef, who is evil, but she's evil because of a reason. Like, there's a reason why she's like that. She's not just evil. So I wanted to include this on this list because Fandral Staghelm arguably saved the Eastern Kingdoms in Kalimdor. And I felt like in Vanilla, in Silithus, when you find out he's corrupted, I think that's really a really interesting twist. And when you ultimately, he's imprisoned during the book, which book is it? It's Stormrage, I believe, right? Stormrage or Wolfheart? Stormrage, I think. Where he ends up getting, his corruption is revealed and he gets imprisoned. I thought that was really interesting too. But the way that they kind of ended his story being like, I'm just crazy now, blah, 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 and he becomes like a boss in the Firelands, I thought that was kind of goofy. So I wanted to include that story on this list because Fandral Staghelm is a really interesting character to me, and I liked his multi-layers, and this is one example of him doing good and actually saving the world. So, on this list of what I love, to go back to that, Crystal Song Forest, Princess Therida's origin, which I'll talk about later, and the Saronite story. What I don't like, I already mentioned one, it's the neutering of Cthulhu and N'Zoth's influences and basically making Yogg-Saron do everything. And I don't like that because I feel like it takes something away from the overall story when Blizzard is like, hey, you know that old god that you already killed? Guess what? He did all of the stuff. And even though N'Zoth is still out there, he didn't really do that much. Like, I like that each of them had their own thing. Like, Cthulhu had Ahn'Qiraj, and he built this army out of these insect creatures. And Yogg-Saron corrupted the keepers around Ulduar, and he took control of the thing and was about to launch like an invasion. And I like that N'Zoth was the one who did the Emerald Nightmare, and that was his deal, because that was ultimately proves in Legion to be a gigantic problem. Like, if he was the one that he did that, his plans come to fruition in Legion, and the Nightmare starts fucking all the shit up. And I was fine that multiple old gods corrupted Deathwing, that was fine, but I feel like something is taken away when they remove a lot of that stuff and just give it all to Yogg-Saron, who already is dead and defeated in the lore. So, I don't know. Another thing I really dislike from this is the origins of the universe. The origins of the entire Warcraft universe have basically been homogenized. And it basically is because the Titans did it or the old gods did it. Literally all the good things in the Warcraft universe are because of the Titans and because of light. And essentially all of the bad things are because of the Void Lords. Now, I should explain, this is where we're going to get into more tangents, because I need to explain what the Void Lords are, because they are a new thing to this. The Void Lords, okay, so let's go to the very beginning of Chronicle, before the universe of Warcraft even existed. Much like with Diablo, there was light and there was darkness. But unlike Diablo, light and darkness were not personified by creatures. Like in Diablo, light was Anu and darkness was Tophemet. But in Warcraft, it was just the ideas of light and darkness. And darkness, in this context, darkness is interchangeable with void and shadow. So I'm going to try and use void because that's what they use. But shadow and like darkness are the same thing in this context. There's also like a sect of fel magic that's shadow energy. That's not what I'm talking about. Like the shadow magic that warlocks use, that's technically fel magic and blah, 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 blah. We're not talking about that. We're talking about void here. So in the beginning of the universe, there was light, and light traveled throughout the universe, just being light and bringing peace and harmony or wherever it went. But as light was fading, like the end, like if you think of like light as like a comet, the end trail, the tail of light is like slowly fading, and void is creeping up. And a big theme with the void in this universe is void empowers itself by absorbing everything else around it. So as light is like going throughout the universe, doing its thing, void is like coming behind it, and eventually light and void start clashing with one another. And basically how the universe is made is that light and void go throughout the universe, clashing against one another. And as this is happening, planets are forming and timelines are forming and shards of void are flying off and shards of light are flying off. And so light and void are basically just doing this throughout the universe for infinity. And these shards of void that go flying off eventually coalesce into physical beings, which become known as the Void Lords. And to give you a kind of, because the Void Lords are kind of like incomprehensibly powerful. Like, if you think of the Burning Legion as powerful, or the Old Gods as powerful, if you like think of it in Pokemon terms, they are only like the second evolution. Like, the Void Lords are like the ultimate evolution of evil in the universe. They want to consume all the things, they want to destroy everything, because doing so empowers themselves. I'm going to read the description of them from the beginning of the Chronicle. Here we go. The Void Lords are monstrous entities composed of pure shadow energy. These beings are cruel and merciless behind mortal comprehension. Driven by an insatiable hunger, the Void Lords seek to devour all matter and energy in the physical universe. In their natural state, the Void Lords exist out of reality. This is important. Only the most powerful of these entities can manifest in the physical universe, and only for a limited amount of time. To maintain their presence in reality, the Void Lords must consume untold amounts of matter and energy. So, if you think of this, my fist is like the universe. The Void Lords exist out of it, and they can't get in. The Void Lords cannot get into our universe. So, what they can do is the most powerful ones of them can like try really hard and manifest a part of themselves in our universe. They can penetrate into our universe through like this physical manifestation of part of their power. And what those are, drumroll please, are the Old Gods. The Old Gods are physical manifestations of the Void Lords in our universe. And basically, as light and the Titans and the Naru, and by the way, when I explained that shards of void flew off during this conflict and became the Void Lords, when shards of light flew off as light and darkness were clashing, the light shards fused together, became physical beings in our universe, and that is what the Naru are. So, the Naru are basically just, I'll read the description, I'm on the same page. The Naru are benevolent creatures of holy energy. They are perhaps the purest expression of the light that exists in the Great Dark Beyond. Sidebar, the Great Dark Beyond is basically all of space. The Twisting Nether is not space. The Twisting Nether is like a dimension that's kind of like resting against the Great Dark Beyond, but the Twisting Nether is its own dimension. The Great Dark Beyond is all space, and the Twisting Nether is basically its own universe where the forces of light and void are so volatile that they kind of created their own little pocket dimension. Think of it that way. So, the Naaru have vowed to bring peace and hope to all mortal civilizations and waylay the dark forces of the void that seek to engulf creation. This is also kind of a retcon because everything we've seen from the Naaru so far have been the Naaru are interested in creating the army of light to fight and ultimately defeat the Burning Legion. But Chronicle, that the Naaru really are never described in Chronicle as going after the Burning Legion now. The Naaru are always trying to resist the void and just spread peace throughout the universe. So, as Light and the Naaru and the Titans, and basically the Titans are composed of primordial matter from which the universe was born, they are basically a world that has like a soul inside of it. And this world soul is basically sleeping and dreaming until the planet becomes powerful enough and the world soul matures enough for it to awaken and become a Titan. And the Titans, it's interesting because the motivation of the Titans has changed now as well. Before, we had thought the Titans were interested in just spreading throughout the universe, creating life. And while they still do this, their actual motivation is just to find other Titans. So, to get back to my point, as Light and the Naaru and the Titans are going throughout the universe doing their thing, the Void Lords are outside of our universe basically going, man, if only we could get in there and get some of that power for ourselves. So what they do is they manifest old gods and basically just shoot them throughout the universe as parasites flying through space, shot off from the old gods into our universe, or from the Void Lords, trying to find any possible world soul and any possible kind of energy they can consume. Because the Void Lords are so powerful, to get back to this actual main point, that Sargeras believed if the Void Lords, through the old gods, could find a planet with a world soul and corrupt it enough to make it awaken as essentially a Dark Titan, that Dark Titan would be so incomprehensibly powerful that the Titans and Sargeras himself, nobody would stand a chance. So, this ties into actually my second point that I don't like. They changed Sargeras' motivation for doing what he's doing. Originally, Sargeras' motivation was, look, I've been fighting these demons for a long-ass time. I've realized that there's no possible way to beat them. I've realized that the Titans' idea of order throughout the universe is flawed. And I realize that the actual way the universe would be perfect is if everything was destroyed and in chaos. They changed that now to Sargeras basically being like, oh fuck, if the Void Lords corrupt a world soul, we are all literally dead. And so it's even better to just destroy everything rather than have the Void Lords corrupt even one world soul. So, I really, really hate that they changed Sargeras from being like the ultimate evil. This may sound hypocritical based on the last point that I was making, but I think in narratives like this, there are places for people who are ultimately evil and ultimately good. I didn't want to mistake you guys when I was talking about that earlier. I actually forgot to bring that up. I'm fine that there are people in groups and individuals who are just all evil or all good. I just hate that Warcraft has a lot of people like that. But I hate that they changed Sargeras and the Burning Legion from being like this ultimate evil, 100% evil, to being still really evil, but kind of like a benevolent undertone to Sargeras' madness. I don't like that Sargeras went crazy and wants to destroy the universe because he thinks he's protecting it. I despise that idea. That might be the thing that I hate the most, because Sargeras is supposed to be the perfect individual. He was a Titan. He was their greatest warrior. He fought all the demons that could stop them all, but then they corrupted him by making him realize demons cannot ultimately all be defeated, and no matter what he does, they'll still be around in trying to corrupt and destroy everything. The idea that this noble and benevolent and pure individual could be corrupted beyond such repair that he becomes entirely evil was a fascinating story to me. But now they changed him to be I'm still evil and crazy, but I'm doing it for a good reason to me. It still sucks for all of you because I'm going to kill all of you, but to me, this is a good idea. I hate that they added that motivation to his character. So, is that everything I want to talk about for this point? Yeah. What Blizzard... No, I forgot one more point. I forgot Aegwynn. Okay, so what Blizzard fucked up? The origins of the universe, making everything about the Titans, because everything literally is about the Titans. Every world they go to, they spread their influence. Everything from the Emerald Dream to all of the races on Azeroth to the Well of Eternity to literally anything you could think of are because of the Titans. And yes, I do realize that most of those things we knew beforehand were because of the Titans. But there were some things like the Ancients. The Ancients are implied in this. It's funny because in Chronicle, Blizzard seems to want their cake and eat it too, because they talk about the Keepers creating the Emerald Dream. But in that same description of the Emerald Dream, they pull one of these things where they're like, Freya totally created the Emerald Dream, but some people believe the Emerald Dream always existed. You can't do that in a book like this. You can't say, oh, there's two possible separate origins for this thing. You gotta pick one. So, even the Emerald Dream and the Ancients again are another one of these things where it's these are just primordial little spirits from Azeroth that are going to help. Or are they? So, literally everything is because of the Titans or the Void Lords through the Old Gods. Sargeras' motivations are number 2. The neutering of Yogg-Saron was my number 4, and I skipped over my number 3. My number 3 was they retconned literally all of the interesting quirks out of Aegwynn's character. And I'm going to talk about, this also was a question on my list, so I might as well cover this right now too. Part of this at least. Anthony Levy, he asked, is there anything about the battle between Aegwynn and the avatar of Sargeras? And yes. That the story of that didn't change, although the Dragonflights were involved, and I can't actually remember off the top of my head if that was true before that. But basically, Aegwynn is doing her thing. She's the Guardian. Let's skip to this page. Where is it? Right here. Aegwynn is the Guardian. All of the things have happened. The Sundering has happened. The Titans have already arrived and left, and blah, blah, blah. The Keepers have fought and killed one another, and the Guardian of Tirisfal is already chosen. The Order of Tirisfal is here, blah, 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 blah. So, Aegwynn is about to reach the end of her 100-year duty. And that's basically what it was. Each of the Guardians were supposed to only be a Guardian for a year, or 100 years, and then give their power back. So, Aegwynn is almost done with her duty as the Guardian. But she sensed something dark in Northrend. So she travels there and discovers that there are demons everywhere, fucking up the Blue Dragonflight hardcore. They're siphoning the magic out of them, they're killing them, they're infesting the land. And so, although the Blue Dragonflight was powerful, they couldn't withstand the demons. So basically, Aegwynn decides she's going to go to the Wormrest Temple and basically say, yo, Alexstrasza, Ysera, Nozdormu, Malagos, get your shit together because we're all fighting now. And so the dragon aspects in Aegwynn basically create a trap where they stage an ambush near Galakrond, his remains. And it's not really important, but he was a giant dragon and blah, blah, blah. There's a short story about him, but it's pretty stupid. So they stage a trap near Galakrond's remains, and all the dragons are fighting alongside with Aegwynn. Aegwynn's creating blizzards and arcane storms, and they're fucking up the demons hardcore. But as they think they've won, the skies over Northrend just darken, just completely black. The world begins to quake and shake, and suddenly Sargeras appears, but it's his avatar. And so, even though this was only an avatar, it contained a tiny portion of his vast cosmic power. Nonetheless, it radiated great strength and fury, and he unleashed terrible might on Aegwynn, because Aegwynn was the most powerful member there, and he wanted to destroy her, who had taken out so many of his agents over time. But Egwene did not hesitate to fight back. She summoned all of her powers of the Guardian of Tirisfal, the Tirisfallen powers, and she's just fighting Sargeras hard. Here's Avatar hardcore. He ultimately wins, but we all know the story now. Part of his soul goes into Egwene and corrupts her, or waits to corrupt Medivh. Now, they changed the reasoning that she doesn't want to give her powers back, and they changed how she creates Medivh. Instead of just being... She is still described as stubborn and bullheaded, but instead of being selfish and wanting to choose the next Guardian herself, on her own accord of her own volition, because that is how she is as a character, the reason she does this now is because Sargeras corrupts her into being paranoid about the Guardian, the Order of Tirisfal. And then they also pull some stuff where they were like, she's concerned that the Guardian of the Council of Tirisfal are getting involved in politics, and that was another thing Sargeras was corrupting her mind to do. And then we find out that her suspicions that were corrupted by Sargeras were right, and they actually were. And it's basic. And then there's also, she decides she wants to have a child and pass along her own power to this child. And instead of finding Yogg-Saron and just using and abusing him and seducing him for a one-night stand to get pregnant, she actually fell in love with him because he was trying to find her, because the council was like, yo, give your power back, and she said no. So they sent a bunch of agents after her, and Yogg-Saron was one of them, and they met and fall in love, and Neelis was like, she's kind of right about the council, and they loved each other, and they have Medivh lovingly, and she gives her power to Medivh, and she like lovingly leaves him with Yogg-Saron as he goes to Stormwind to be the court magician, which is retcon because he was originally the court magician to Stormwind, and she found him and seduced him and basically used him to have a child. And after she had gave birth, she was like, surprise, I just used you for this baby, here, have it. They got rid of like all of the interesting quirks to her character for no reason, to make her seem good, when once again it was interesting that she was this powerful individual, but she also had these faults. I think that's where my distinction comes in. I'm fine with like the cosmic entities being good or evil, but the mortals should be complex and distinct and interesting. And taking away Egwene's selfishness and taking away her desire to give her power to who she wants rather than let the council decide, why would they take that away from her? That makes the character a less interesting character and gives nothing to Sargeras, because he still does the same thing. It doesn't like improve Sargeras' character as an individual because he did this. It's just taking away part of Egwene's character. I don't understand why they did that. So there we go. To answer that question about my 3 top and hated things, I think I answered like 4 questions in there. So, all right, let's just to recap one more time. I'm not going to explain any of them, but the things that I hated the most: origin of the universe, becoming just Titans or Void Lords, Sargeras' motivations, Egwene's entire character being neutered, and the neutering of Cthulhu and N'Zoth's influences to give to Yogg-Saron. What I loved were a lot of the small-time stories, the story of Crystal Song Forest, the story of Princess Theradros, which we're going to explore later, and Saronite being throughout the world spread, and Fandral Staghelm basically saving the world. All right, so moving on. That was like a 25-minute question. All right. Number 3 is from Zaxarian. He said, I saw a picture of Lei Shen fighting Zuin. Why is Lei Shen so huge? Now, where is this on my tabs? It's question 3. All right, Necroxis, your organization skills could probably use some work. Here we go, question 3. So, this is kind of... They don't answer this, but I'm going to give you my answer as what I believe why Lei Shen makes himself look bigger. So, where do I even begin with this? So, right now, in this part of the story, or the book, it is about 15,000 to 12,000 years before the Dark Portal opens. Kalimdor is still the single continent. The War of the Ancients hasn't happened yet. The Mogu in that area that would inevitably become Pandaria are is prospering. And the reason they're doing it is because one of the Titan Keepers, Ra, traveled there with a bunch of Titan Forged individuals. And Titan Forged is the new name that they give to the multiple races that were created by the Titans, like the Earthen, like the Iron Vrykul, like the Tol'vir. That's going to come back later because there's a question about the Tol'vir. All of them, and the Mogu. They were created by, I can't believe what it's called right off the top of my head. Shit. The Forge of Wills, which was established in Northrend, in Ulduar, and that's why Ulduar was built around it. It was one of the safeguards the Titans left in place on Azeroth after they got rid of the old gods, got rid of the elemental lords, imprisoned all the bad stuff. The Keepers, Mimiron and Arcades, created the Forge of Wills and the Forge of Origination. The Forge of Wills was placed in Northrend. Ulduar was built around it to protect it. It was also built there because Yogg-Saron's prison was there. And Ra, one of the Keepers, and you guys might know that him as Ra Den. He's in Mists of Pandaria. He's the heroic only boss in 5.2. Yeah, the Thunder King patch. He's called Ra Den by the Mogu because that means Master Ra. But his name is just actually Ra. So the Titan Keeper Ra takes the Forge of Origination. He takes all of these Titan Forged. He takes Tol'vir. He takes Anubisath, constructs. He takes the Mogu. He takes a bunch of other races with him, travels south, and establishes the Forge of Origination in what would become Uldum. They build Uldum around it to protect it, and so but as this was going on, the Titans have already left. Ra has kind of disappeared. No one knows where he went, and the Mogu have sprung up as like this big giant force. And so before the Thunder King arises, there's a bunch. It's the Age of 100 Kings is what it's called. A bunch of the Mogus are just killing and fighting each other. There's a bunch of clans just clashing, and then the Thunder King comes. He was the descendant of a minor warlord. His father was an advisor. Let's see. He was the descendant of a minor warlord. Blah 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 blah. Yeah. His father was kind of a minor warlord who gets murdered by a close advisor. And rather than Lei Shen trying to step into that role because he was not powerful enough yet, he decided to abdicate his position because he knew if he tried to take over that position in that minor clan, he would get murdered. He'd get assassinated. So what he does instead, he's very intelligent, Lei Shen. He decides that he wants to go find High Keeper Ra. And Ra is basically the most powerful of the Keepers, we find out in this book. And he decides to go find Ra, who has disappeared. And he's searching for him. Lei Shen discovers a hidden vault beneath the land north of the Veil of the Eternal Blossoms. There are sacred chambers there the Mogu had all forgotten about because they had succumbed to... a lot of them has succumbed to the Curse of Flesh from Yogg-Saron again. I forgot to even mention that earlier. Yogg-Saron also gets Curse of Flesh credit, which he always did, but that's just a pile on to the other stuff they gave him for no reason. So Lei Shen discovers Ra. He discovers Ra in the Thundering Mountain. Or is it in the Thundering Mountain? No. He discovers him in Mogushan Vault. And he discovers Ra there. Ra's kind of like in a comatose state. He's not sleeping. He is awake. But he's basically just sitting there, not acknowledging anything. Lei Shen's trying to interact with him. Be like, hey, I've heard our people have legends about you. What is your deal? Are you really connected to the Titans or our creators? What is the deal? Ra's not answering. Days and weeks pass, and Lei Shen grows frustrated with Ra's silence. And finally, he realizes that Ra is not contemplating anything. Ra is sitting there basically in depression, and he had given up because he knew that the Titans have all been destroyed. That's also new to this. The Titans are all dead. The Pantheon's dead. Sargeras killed all of them. And how Ra figured this out was... And this is why this video is going to be long, because to explain some of these things, I have to explain other things, and to explain other things, I got to explain other things. So, when Sargeras goes... okay, so I got to explain Voidlord stuff again. So Sargeras initially is still on the side of the Titans. He discovers a world that has a world soul. But to his horror, there are old gods all across the surface of it. The dreams of this world soul are not peaceful and harmonious, but like nightmarish and afraid and angry and scared. There are dreadlords all over the planet basically just basking in this void energy. And Sargeras is like, oh shit, the thing that I feared the most! And so he destroys the planet because he's like, if this thing awakens, there's no way we can get all these forces and these old gods off this planet. It's too far gone. I have to just destroy it to save everybody. So he destroys the world soul, goes back to the Pantheon. The Pantheon's like, what the fuck did you do? Because the Pantheon had not seen yet the power of the old gods. They thought that they could still cleanse them off the planet and save the world soul. But Sargeras basically told them, no, you guys didn't understand. You weren't there. You didn't see it. I had to destroy it. So after this, that was basically the fracture point between Sargeras and the Pantheon. He wasn't evil yet, but then he eventually goes on to understand that the best way to stop the Void Lords are to destroy the whole universe. He goes to Mar-Doom, where he had imprisoned all of the demons, and shatters the planet. But because there were so many demons there, the fell magic there was so powerful. When he shattered the planet, the fell magic exploded like in his face, and he became like the corrupted, twisted version. He goes back to the Pantheon after Agramar, another Titan who was Sargeras' second in command. After Agramar discovers Azeroth, and sees the old gods there, and Agramar's like, oh my god, Sargeras was right. So Agramar goes back to the Pantheon, tells them about it. That's why they come to Azeroth and order all the shit, stop the old gods, stop the elemental lords. Then they leave. Sargeras then again returns to them and is like, my plan now is to kill everything, because that's what we have to do. The Pantheon obviously is like, no, and they fight. And Sargeras having fell magic is just far superior in power to all of them. Apparently fell magic, we learned, is really effective against Titans. So he destroys them all, basically. But before their souls dissipate and they truly die, Norgannon, one of the Titans, the spellcaster one, basically weaves this spell of protection over all of them. And even though their physical bodies die, a portion of their soul goes streaming through the cosmos and goes right to Azeroth. And each one of the keepers who the Titans had empowered suddenly gets like a jolt of the Titan's soul in them. And Aman'thul, who was the first Titan and the most powerful of them outside of Sargeras, gets Aman'thul's soul, goes into Ra. And so that's when Ra realizes the Titans are all dead. It doesn't even matter anymore. All this shit that we did, the Pantheon's gone. None of it matters. So he disappears, and this is where he went. And he's kind of just sitting there in silence. So Lei Shen is watching him, and he realizes Ra's not contemplating anything. He's given up hope. And he starts like berating him and screaming at him. And then Ra wakes up and is like, you think you know some shit? I will show you some stuff. And he takes Lei Shen to the Thundering Mountain, which is the island that we then go to in 5.2. And he's like, let's see, blah, 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 blah. No Mogu had ever dare scaled the mountain before because it was believed to be a forbidden place. And so inside, Lei Shen got the answers he wanted. The Titans of the Pantheon were dead. They were murdered by one of their own. The final hope of the world of Azeroth was Azeroth's world soul. But it was already infested with old gods. Like, Rob, with the Titans and the Pantheon dead and old gods, even though they were imprisoned, even with old gods on Azeroth, and Azeroth, the world soul, not having awakened yet, Ra's like, fuck it, man. We're all dead anyway, so who even gives a shit? So, Ra had assumed that learning this would shake Lei Shen's soul to its core, as it had his own. Yet Lei Shen reacted in a way that Ra then didn't expect. I'll read from this passage. Lei Shen decided that if his master had no interest in continuing the Titan's purpose, he would do it himself. Without warning, he struck out and incapacitated Ra. Lei Shen then bound the mighty being in enchanted iron bands. He not only stole Ra Den's power, his incredible power, but he also stole the bit of Aman'Thul's soul. So to get back to this question about Lei Shen fighting Zuin, Lei Shen then emerges from the Thundering Mountain and is like, guess what, bitches? I got powers over storm and lightning. I'm going to conquer everyone and become the king. And he does. And eventually he ends up fighting he uses the engine of Naxxralah to create more creatures. They were able to find a way to reverse the curse of flesh, so they turn back into a stone Mogu for the most part. For the Mogu, it was like an era of prosperity. But for everybody else, Lei Shen basically said, hey, the only way I know how to continue the Titans' work is to subjugate everyone under my control. So he eventually does this. We know that he enslaves the Hosen, he enslaves the Jinyu, he enslaves the Grummels. The August Celestials are like, fuck, man, what are you doing, bro? And they start fighting against him. Zuin, the White Tiger, is like, I gotta stop this guy. So Lei Shen and Zuin fight. Lei Shen beats the shit out of him and imprisons him in the temple. But why he's so big is never explained. My interpretation of why he would get bigger is two things. We know that Sargeras and the other Titans could change how big and small they could appear. They could willingly change their forms. They're not the only ones who could do that either. The dragon aspects could do it. Most dragons could actually do it. Kil'jaeden and Archimonde could do it too. So, if you want to explain it that way, he had part of Aman'thul's power. And so, he could change his form at will. Why he would do that, I think, is because Lei Shen was narcissistic. He was pompous. He thought it was his job to continue on the Titans' work, even though the way he was doing that was not even what the Titans would have wanted. So, because he believed himself to be so important and so powerful and so vital to the Savior, like the continued, what's the word I'm looking for? The continued success of Azeroth as a planet, he needed to do all the things he's doing. So I could see Lei Shen actually using the power he had to make himself seem bigger because he thinks he is so self-important. So, once again, short question, long answer. So that is why they don't explicitly say that. That is my interpretation of the facts. Anyone else who has read the Chronicle, let me know how you think about that. Do you agree or disagree, and why? That's what I think makes the most sense. So, all right. Let's move on to the next question. The next question is from Omega Angel, a longtime subscriber. Thank you for asking your question. And he asks, or she, I don't know if you're female or male, asks, is there any more explanation behind Dathomir and the elves in Tirisfal? How long were they there? Did they know about the thing beneath the zone? He can't remember its name. And is there any new lore on his favorite character, the best character, Kael'thas? This is question 4. I can answer Kael'thas' question right now. No. There's no extra lore on Kael'thas. And that is because the Chronicle ends before the First War begins. And even though Kael'thas was technically alive then, he wasn't doing anything of importance. And there was no reason for him to be brought up, so he wasn't. Okay, so, but there is more information about Dathomir and the elves in Tirisfal. Okay, so, to set the stage, this is 7,300 years before the Dark Portal. The Sundering has just occurred. The continents are where they are now. The Night Elves under Malfurion and Tyrande are basically like, arcane magic is banned. It's clearly bad. We saw what Azshara did with it. I even imprisoned my own brother for all of eternity for creating another Well of Eternity. Arcane magic is bad. But then we had some of the Highborn, who were once Queen Azshara's people, having betrayed her because they realized she was batshit crazy. This group, led by Dathomir Sunstrider and his Highborn, were like, we helped you beat Azshara with arcane magic. We're still going to practice arcane magic. So they're just flaunting their disregard of the rules in Malfurion's face. And Malfurion and Tyrande went so far to say that arcane magic is banned, and if you do it, you will be put to death. But because there were so many people doing it in Dathomir's group and all of his elves, his night elves, they're still night elves at this point, he's basically like, Malfurion says, I can't execute like all of these people. So you guys just gotta go. So he banishes all of them from their lands. And Dathomir's like, fine, whatever, I don't want to live here anyway. Dathomir ends up taking a vial of the Well of Eternity water with him, and they sail across the sea to the Eastern Kingdoms. And as some of you might know, the first place that they land is in an area that is known as Tirisfal. And another sidebar here, Tirisfal is called Tirisfal because the Watcher Tyr died there trying to destroy 2 old god minions. We finally have a name for the race of, like, the Faceless One minions. Like, the big, like, general, like, Vijax or whatever his name was. They're called Sithrax. Like, C''Thrax. So, Tyr died at a place that would be called known as Tirisfal, fighting 2 Sithraxi. The first one was Zakaj. That's the name that you couldn't remember. The second one was another Sithrax named Kithix, I believe. Yeah, Kithix. Kithix is important later, but not right now. So, he doesn't kill either of them, but he severely weakens both of them. Zakaj gets, like, imprisoned in the tomb with Tyr's body, and he basically is inert until the events of Legion, when the players come there to do their artifact quest, specifically the Shadow Priest. Some of the other players do go there to get different things, but the Shadow Priests in specific are the ones that fight Zakaj, that destroy his body, and siphon his void powers from him so he is permanently dead. So, that's why it's called Tirisfal, because Tyr died there, and there were Vrykul who worshipped him as Titan constructs. They worshipped him there, they called the area Tirisfal, but it got kind of bastardized into Tirisfal. Like, it was called Tyr's Fall, Tyr' space Fall, but it gets bastardized into Tirisfal. So they land in Tirisfal, and they're like, this place is pretty great. This is a pretty cool place. It's a nexus of ley lines, and ley lines are like the magical veins of arcane magic throughout the world. There's a nexus here, which means 2 or more of the veins overlap, and it's more powerful there, magic-wise. So they're basically like, this is a cool place. We're down living here. This is great. There are humans nearby. We'll get to them in a second, but there's something, like, weird. There's some weird magic here. It's like, there's good arcane magic, but there's some kind of, like, bad aftertaste almost. So, like, there's some weird shadow void magic, and we don't know what's going on here. And so, as they're living there, we don't know how long they lived there for. It just says, let's see. They inhabited the place for a time. So, we don't know how long that was. Actually, I can probably guess. Let's see. The founding of Quel'Thalas is at 6,800 years. The High Elves landed there at 7,300. So maybe around 500 years they were chilling there. And they're, like, taking in all this arcane energy. They're like, this is great, this is awesome, but something's wrong. The shadow energy of Zakaj's corpse underneath the land is beginning to corrupt some of his people. And his people are, like, coming to Dathomar, and they're saying, these primitive humans are here. Like, these creatures. They're building, like, buildings and temples and, like, just their civilization on top of this nexus of ley lines. They did that because they want to spite us. We should forcibly remove them, or better yet, we should subjugate all of them and completely just dominate them. And Dathomar is like, whoa. To his credit, he's like, he tells them, I have no desire to, Dathomar, he basically said, I have no wish to wage war against the people who are no threat to our kind. But he also had sensed this dark magic here. So he basically told them, look, we're out. We can't live here. The humans are here, and whatever this energy is corrupting us and making us violent and want to fight the humans. The humans aren't even attacking us. They're no threat to us. We could annihilate them if we wanted. But why would we? So we're just going to move and just go north. So that's, I think, is a pretty interesting tidbit, that Dathomar was like the noble person in that scenario, who basically said, why? Why would we go destroy the humans? There's no point in doing that. So that's it. They didn't know that Zakaj was actually underneath the land, but Dathomar and some of the more powerful magic users could sense that there was something wrong, and they left. So that's it. All right. That is that question. Number 5, the next question is from Doraman17. Thank you for asking that question. This is a specific question that I actually like. The last 2 actually were very specific questions, which is the ones that I wanted. But I'm happy to answer the big, vague ones too. Let's see if I can find this before I begin talking. It's toward the end of the book because it has to do with humans, which don't come around for quite some time. Here we go. Number 5. All right. Here we go. Oh, that was the wrong one. Number 5 is right here. Okay, so Dorman asks, it's a pretty long question, so bear with me. Hello, Necroxis. My questions are regarding the light, specifically regarding the human version of it. Has it been confirmed that humans also draw light from the Naru like the Draenei, or is it still sort of vague? Is there more information regarding how humans came to learn about the light? Lastly, is there some new information regarding how someone can wield more powerful light than others? Like, is it based on how good you are? He says he doesn't think how that's how it works, and you're right. Is it based on your faith in the light, or something completely different? I realize these questions are oddly specific, but I really like the mystery surrounding the light that the humans use in contrast to the Draenei, since the humans aren't quite as holy as the Draenei or the Naru. Well, this ties back into my problem of homogenizing all the lore. Because guess what? The humans are using the same light from the Naru that the Draenei are. There's a really short blurb on this. I can actually show you the picture of how long it is. It's right there. That's how big it is. This little blurb right here. So I'll just read the whole thing. After the Troll Wars, a number of human priests began having faint visions and dreams of angelic beings, geometric forms that thrummed with living light. Although they did not know it yet, the priests had actually communed with the Naru in the Great Dark Beyond. Through this connection, the Naru guided the hearts of some humans and introduced them to the holy light. From their tenuous encounters with the Naru, the priests had learned to harness the extraordinary healing effects of the light. They also formed a religious movement founded on the tenets of justice, peace, and altruistic works. Popular among the common folk, this movement flourished. So, the humans basically, some of their more religious or holy ones, I guess you could probably even argue some of the ones who are even more in tune with magic, started getting visions from the Naru. And they inevitably, vaguely connected to the Naru through the Great Dark Beyond. And the Naru, more subtly than the Draenei, began exerting their influence about peace and stuff onto them. And that is why the Holy Light came to be. Now, it makes more sense why the Draenei are way more connected to the light than the humans, because there are a lot of humans who don't even believe in the light. And I'm sure you seem like a person who knows the story here about the Draenei specifically, at least. I'm sure and other people are aware that the Draenei were saved by the Naru. When Sargeras was creating the Legion, he needed really intelligent creatures to serve basically as his generals. So he discovered Argus, the home planet of a group of individuals called Eridar. And these were very powerful magic users. And he came to Argus, to the Eridar, and he tricked them, for the most part. Basically said, hey, you guys love to learn all the things. Well, my name is Sargeras, and I can teach you about the universe. And more specifically, I can give you the answer that you all have been asking for. The answer of what the true flaw behind the universe is. You just have to subjugate to my will and become my minions and join my army. And out of the 3 leaders of the Eridar, Kil'jaeden and Archimonde, basically were like, sounds good, sign us up. Velen was uneasy about it, so he left that meeting with Sargeras' spirit and basically went and took the Atamal crystal, which was this really ancient crystal that the Naru had previously already visited Argus and gave to them, which is an interesting change of pace because originally the original Atamal crystal, before it got shattered, was just kind of a relic that the Draenei had. But now we know that it was given specifically to them by the Naru. So Velen, he has the Atamal crystal. He's praying. He's trying to figure out what's going on. The Naru come and basically tell them, Sargeras is bad news bears. Get the hell out of there. Take the people who follow you, and we will come and help you. And so that is when the Genadar comes, otherwise known as Oshugun, the ship, and takes Velen and his Naru, and they escape. And ever since then, the Naru are more directly, not manipulating the Draenei, but influencing them about the light and what they should be doing. So it makes sense that the Naru are way more connected to the Draenei than the humans, because the humans kind of through space and time, like mentally connected to them. Some of them did. So that's the story of that. To answer your other part, there's no more new information about how people are good or bad with the light. So that means the old canon still holds, and it's basically how strong are your convictions in what you believe. You could be evil and still have the light because you're really convicted, or you have strong convictions in what you're doing. That is why Arthas, after he had already taken up Frostmourne, could still use the light for a little while. That is why the Scarlet Crusade could use the light despite being pretty unequivocally evil individuals. So yeah. All right. That is that question. Thank you for that question. All right. So next question is from Dark Dude 103, another longtime subscriber. Thank you for your question. He asks, how does the book read? Is it like a World of Ice and Fire, where it's sort of like reading a history book, or is it purely information that has been brought up about the origins? Or then he asks, the origins of the old gods, or hints of the fifth old god. I already explained the origins of the old god. The fifth old god got retconned out of existence. There is no fifth old god. There's only 4. There's only Yogg-Saron, N'Zoth, Yogg-Saron, and Cthulhu. There is no fifth old god. How does the book read? The book is it's like a mixture between a history book. Like, for those of you guys who are in school now or remember school, your history books weren't just like bullet points like, Hitler did this and then this. I'm bringing Hitler up twice in this video. Hitler did this and this and this and this and this and this and this. It was kind of told to you like almost like as a story, but it was like historically accurate and like factual. That's how this book is. Like, let me just open up to a random page and I've already shown you guys some pages, but like for example, this page is talking about the burdens of Xiao-Hao. It doesn't just say that like Xiao-Hao had all of these burdens, A, B, C, D, E, F, and then he had one more that he didn't deal with. Like, it tells it to you through kind of like a narrative style, but it still is just basically like an encyclopedia of knowledge, to the point that the back even has an index, which is incredibly helpful for this video, by the way. So there's the index. He also wanted to ask about the relationship between the humans and the High Elves post-Troll Wars. It's exactly the same as that we know about. The elves were getting their shit wrecked by the Amani trolls, and they came to the primitive humans, and King Thoradin, we're actually going to talk about this a little bit later on, with Stromgarde, came to King Thoradin and it was like, look guys, we're getting wrecked by how powerful and how numerous these trolls are. If you don't help us, and they're going to kill all of us, they're going to come for you next. And Thoradin basically agreed, and they had an exchange of how they would help. The humans would come help the elves, and then the elves would train 100 humans in the art of magic, because elven magic was like mythical amongst the humans, and they wanted to learn how to do it. So that's what happened. They ultimately beat the trolls. They pushed them all the way back to Zuluman. The trolls are basically, the Amani are basically now shattered forever. They never rise again to power for the most. I mean, they really don't. Even in World of Warcraft, it's like nothing. But yeah, and then they remain friends until the Scourge arrive and fuck all that up. So that's the same still. Okay. Next question is from Ryan Kennedy. He asks, this is number 7, so let me see if I can find this real quick. Here we go. Number 7. This one is a multi-part source, so I got to go to part 1 first. Number 7. Here we go. Whoops. This is for that. Okay, sorry about that, guys. I have many notes that I want to make sure I get right. Where are we? Here we go. Number 7. Okay. Ryan Kennedy asks, does the Chronicle detail the split in the Proto-Tauren races who become the Tauren, the Tonka, and the Yangol? I'm assuming the split happened after the Sundering, but I'd like to know more about it. Is it also confirmed that the Tauren pray to Therazane, the Earth Mother? What is the relationship given Therazane's general attitude toward mortals? So, I'll tackle that first question, that part first. Yes, they explicitly lay out how the Tauren and the Tonka and the Yangol are related. So, what time frame is this? This is about 12,000 years before the Dark Portal opens up. Lei Shen is already dead. We're going to talk about when he dies later on in the Tol'vir, because it's actually pretty cool. Lei Shen's already dead. This is during the rule of the Emperor Qiang, or Xiang, Quying. Kiang the Merciless. He's actually one of the bosses in the Mogushan Vaults in the four kings encounter. So this is around the time that Kiang is ruling, and he basically. So I'll just read this part first. When the Mogu Empire was at its height, an intelligent bovine race known as the Yangol roamed the grassy plains of central Kalimdor. These burly creatures lived in harmony with nature, following the guidance of the wise demigod Cenarius. So, when the Mogu are like in the south, basically chilling and doing their evil thing, there's these really cool like bovine creatures that are like they're into the earth and they're with Cenarius and they love Cenarius because unlike a lot of the other wild gods or the ancients, because that's what they are, the wild gods. Unlike the other wild gods, Cenarius like lives among them and like is like walking among them, and he's this mystical half stag, half man creature, and he's trying to teach them about nature and nature magic and the Emerald Dream and all this other shenanigans. But eventually, those Yangol, those are the original Yangol that don't exist anymore. Those are the original Yangol, and they eventually become. They grew wary of sharing their hunting grounds with the nearby trolls, and they're basically like, we're going to move south because we don't want to bother with these trolls who hate us and want to kill us all the time. Cenarius basically tells them, no, dudes, come on, you got to make peace with them and all of this. But they go, nope, we're leaving. So they go out and they go south. And eventually, they hunted and foraged for food all the way to the edge of the Mogu Empire. And this is when Kiang the Merciless takes note of them. So, he decides, he finds the Yangol and their immense physical strength fascinating. He takes his flesh shapers, who have the power of the Titans to change flesh. He captures them, and he transforms them into even mightier and even more intelligent servants, while at the same time tempering their savage instincts, because they were like savage wild animals, even though they were peaceful with Cenarius. When they fought against the trolls, they were like savagely fighting with them, and they didn't want to do that anymore. So that was good for the Yangol. Too bad they were slaves. They were slaves to the Mogu. But they ended up freeing themselves alongside the Pandaren and the Jinyu and the Hosen and the Grummels. And after the Mogu were overthrown, we don't need to explain that again. Even though the Yangol had gained their freedom, being flesh-shaped in the way they did, they lost a lot of their old traditions. And this goes back to the Tauren and the Tonka and the Yangol being influenced by real-life Native Americans, like a strong love of the land, and this idea that their ancestors persist in the afterlife and can guide and help them. That's why you'll see several events in the lore where Bane will commune with Karen's spirit. But because the Mogu shaped them in the way they did, they lost much of that. Nobody even really remembered Cenarius. They like had vague myths about Cenarius being this weird demigod who used to watch over them. It became like a fable to them. They don't even remember it. Some of the Yangol declared that all of them should abandon all of their traditions and forge a new destiny by force. Other Yangol basically said, "Nah, man, let's just go and chill and be cool." And then some other ones were like, "We just want to be left alone." So they all split off. The ones who wanted to be left alone travel all the way across the continent, go north to eventually what would become Northrend, and they settle in the frigid areas around the Storm Peaks, and they become the Tonka. The ones who are like, nah, man, let's just be chill and cool and like just be nomads and hunt. They decide to go to central Kalimdor, live along the Balmy Plains, right near the Well of Eternity. The Well of Eternity begins changing them a little bit. They become more upright, a little skinnier, and they become the Tauren. And the other Yangol, who basically were like, let's just kill everybody because we have the power, they stay where Pandaria was, and they are the Yangol that we fight in Mists of Pandaria. So that's how the split happened. Now, he asks if the Tauren worship Therazane, who calls herself the Earth Mother, and because they worship the Earth Mother, do they worship Therazane? The answer is no, but there's actually a really, really cool story about this. And this is about Princess Theradras that I mentioned earlier. This is one of my other favorites. So, the Tauren we're with the Tauren now, the ones who are around Kalimdor and the Well of Eternity. But at this point, it's about 1,000 years before the Dark Portal. The Well of Eternity has exploded. The Sundering has happened. The Well of Eternity is gone. So they're still around Kalimdor. They're just living with harmony, and they're like, man, we love nature and we love the elements, and we're just being cool nomads, man. We're just not bothering anybody. We're just living our life. But some of their more spiritual ones, their shaman, they found an area, because the Tauren were always looking for. They're trying to recapture that religious aspect of their culture that they lost when the Mogu flesh-shaped the original Yangol. And throughout Kalimdor, they could, like, their mystical members could always, like, feel something. And they thought it was the Earth Mother, their, like, mythical deity. Not the Earth Mother as in literally Therazane, because they didn't know who that was. But just, like, this mythical deity that they believed roamed the land and who created them. And they're just like, we really want to... God, I wish we could find a place where we could connect with this mythical figure more, because we love her so much. They find this area, and they call it Mashan She, or the Loom of the Earth Mother, in honor of their deity. This was the area along Kalimdor's western coast between Feralos and the Stone Talon Mountains. And if you are a geographical whiz kid on the Warcraft continent of Kalimdor, you might know where this area is, but I'm not going to spoil it yet. So they go to this area, and there's like these faint elemental whispers coming into their heads, and they're getting more convinced that this is the Earth Mother. So they spent decades trying to awaken this people by communicating with the elements and conducting rituals, and they're just like, they're hoping so hard they can connect with this Earth Mother because they want to meet her. They want to meet the person that helped create them. And they eventually succeeded. They awoken something. But it wasn't the Earth Mother. From a massive cavern opens up, and this creature emerges. And who is it other than Princess Theradras, a descendant from Therazane, as you might know. Basically, when the old gods, or when the Titans came to Azeroth and imprisoned the old gods and imprisoned the elemental lords in their planes of existence, their elemental planes, Theradras escaped this by burrowing herself deep underground, and she basically went into like a coma. But because the Tauren showed up and they were performing rituals and using their magic to try and contact her, she awakens. But when she awakens in this area, she wakes up and basically says, I'm really weak. I'm really weak. I need to absorb all of the life energy from this area to empower myself. So what she does is she absorbs all of the nature and life magic in this giant area into herself, killing everything. She kills all the plants. She kills all of the animals. She doesn't kill the Tauren, but she kills the wildlife. She kills the green forest. She kills everything and turns this area into basically a barren wasteland that becomes Desolace. That is why Desolace is nestled in this weird area surrounded by all of this lush green forests. Princess Theradras absorbing all of this magic is what created Desolace, which I think was a really cool thing. That's why I put this on this list. But since the Tauren believed that this area that they were in, that just now has become Desolace, was sacred to the Earth Mother, they were like, fuck! And they just all left. They're like, we don't want nothing to do with this, bye! And they all leave. So, Princess Theradras is now chilling. She's awakened now. And when she devastated all of Desolace, the Emerald Dream and the creatures in it noticed. One in particular was the son of Cenarius, Zeatar. And he emerges from the Emerald Dream to be like, what the hell just happened? And he begins investigating. He finds a cave in Desolace where he discovered Princess Theradras. And although initially he wanted to imprison her, he became enchanted with her because she was radiating this life energy. And it's energy that the Druids and the Emerald Dream are really familiar with, and it's energy that they work with. So Zeatar initially wanted to imprison her, but then he sees her, and she's radiating this magic that he's so familiar with, and he becomes enchanted by her. And Theradras found him beautiful as well. And so she decided to trick him by saying, I didn't know I was going to do that to Desolace, but I want to work together with you, and we can fix it. And so they're both in love, and eventually, you know, boo, 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 and then out pops a bunch of centaur, and that is how centaur are made. Zeatar knew that mating with Theradras was against what nature wanted, but he couldn't help it. From their forbidden union, an aberrant race was born called the Centaur. Their barbarism would come to terrorize the land of Kalimdor. Once Zeatar saw the Centaur, he immediately realized what he had done, and though he tried to connect with his offspring, they hated him. The Centaur recognized that their father hated him, and so then they hated him, and it drove them into a rage, and the Centaur killed Zeatar. But after they did this, Theradras came out and mourned for this man that he actually loved. I mean, she actually loved Zeatar, so she mourned for his body, and she's basically scolding the Centaur because she's their mother. And the Centaur changed their mind and begin to revere Zeatar. So what Theradras does is she takes his broken body into Mara Udin and puts him to rest there, and his spirit ends up being connected there for all of eternity. And the Centaur would name this site Mara Udin, and after they would treat it as holy ground and begin to worship their father after they hated him. Because Theradras came and explained to them, this was your father, how could you do this, blah, 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 blah. And so, that's the story of what the Torm are doing, how they awakened Theradras, what Theradras did and created Desolace, how the Centaur came to be, and yeah. Alright, so there we go. We are over halfway done. Oh my god, this is going to be longer than the first video. Alright. Number 8 is from... oh god, this is a long-time subscriber. I could never figure out how to pronounce your name, dude. Epion V1. He asked a joke question, but because there's an actual answer to this, I'm going to answer it. He asked, does Sargeras have a penis? Question mark. I can't wait for the video. Keep being amazing. Well, thank you for the kind words. The answer would be no, because the Titans don't procreate to create other Titans. Therefore, there would be no sexual organs on the Titans. So no, Sargeras ain't got no penis. All right. Next question is from Penel96. He asks, is there anything on Stromgarde and the Trollbanes? I heard they were mentioned, but didn't hear anything specific. There's not a lot, but do I even have my notes on this? Because I don't think it's enough to even warrant it. Yeah, I actually do. Okay. Diddly-doo, here we go. So, the lore of Stromgarde and Strom and the Trollbanes is basically still the same. Before humanity was unified, there existed a bunch of human clans. One of these clans was the Arathi. They came to realize that just humans warring with one another was doing nothing but weakening humans, because at the same time, this is about 2,800 years before the Dark Portal opens, because at the same time as the humans are killing and fighting each other, the Amani trolls are pushing into the lands and killing them as well. The Arathi knew that if humanity remained divided, it would stand little chance against the trolls. And so, led by a warlord named Thoradin, he conquered all of the humans within their borders, and he brought the other tribes to heel. And the reason why Thoradin was such a genius in doing this is because after he would conquer a tribe, he would say, all right, I conquered you, but guess what? We're fellow humans. I'm going to give you a place at my table. And he would do that to everyone else. Oh, I conquered you. That sucks for your people, but guess what? Now you are on my council of nobles. You are an important person in my army. Or he would arrange political marriages. And so by doing this, rather than just subjugating everyone like the Mogu did, eventually leading to an uprising, I mean, he didn't do this because of this reason, but in contrast, he conquered all of the other tribes by offering them a seat at his table through political marriages. Explaining to them that together we are a more unified force. So, the humanity has now been united, and King Thoradin is crowned, and he tasked his most gifted builders with constructing a mighty capital named Strom in southwest of Tearsfall Glades. But the Amani trolls soon began encroaching on their territory, just as Thoradin had predicted. So, what he does is he takes 2 of his most powerful generals from other tribes. One of them is named Ignatius. He's the important one. He takes Ignatius, makes him a general, and says, Ignatius and his people originally were among the people who lived on the Alterac Mountains. And although Ignatius was considered uncouth and savage by many of the humans, they were unmatched in their bravery and their strength. So Thoradin basically said, yo, dude, you may be kind of savage, but you're powerful as hell, and you know what you're doing. Lead my army against the trolls. And Ignatius would return with this other general who's not really important. His name is Lordain. He dies in some attack, so he's not that important. They return to Strom with tales of a horrific fight brewing between the High Elves and the Amani. And this is when Quel'Tha Lost begins getting attacked, and the elves had already met the humans when they were more primitive, and so the elves were like imminently in danger of being annihilated by the trolls, the High Elves. So they're sending like missives and messages to Strom and to Thoradin saying, look, dude, you gotta help us. You gotta help us. If, like I said earlier, if we die, they're coming for you next. So Thoradin didn't want to do it, but he agrees with this trade, and he sends General Ignatius there. And Ignatius is so effective and so brutal in how he destroys the Amani. Not the Armani, the Amani. That he gets the surname Trollbane. So that is why Ignatius Trollbane is Ignatius Trollbane. So that's basically it. I mean, of course, the Troll Wars go in the humans' favor. Arathor ends up expanding. The humans are beginning learning magic. Now that there's peace because the Troll Wars are over, a bunch of these fortified outposts that were built during the Troll Wars begin getting expanded into basically full-blown capital cities. A bunch of humans that used to live in Strom decided they were going to go explore south. They find this island that's rich with resources. They settle there and they create Kol Tiras. A couple more of them go north and they establish Lordaeron. Some of them go expand to the coast and establish Gilneas. Let's see. Lordaeron is named because of General Lordain that I mentioned. That's like the only important fact. And Lordain ended up sacrificing. So there's this really cool picture here that explains the end of the Troll Wars, and I want to show it. It's humans using their magic to destroy the trolls, and basically what Thoradin's plan was to go attack the trolls and lure them to come back to Alterac, where the 100 humans who were being trained in magic were waiting. And so this was a couple of months now. These humans, the elves found that the humans were really good at magic, so they were really surprised. So these 100 magic users were kept back from the battle. They were kept in Alterac, and they were waiting for a trap. So Thoradin and Ignatius and Lordain, they go attack the trolls. They lure them back to Alterac. The trolls think they're winning. The trolls and their leader, who is their leader? Jintha. The trolls and their leader Jintha were like, we're fucking kicking ass. So they're chasing the humans back to Alterac, and after they get, I believe, is it a specific fort? It's Alterac Fortress, yeah, which becomes the ruined keep in the game. They lure them back to Alterac Fortress. This is when Thoradin and Ignatius basically go, now! And all the 100 humans come out, and instead of just fighting individually, they all simultaneously cast that giant spell and just annihilate the Amani trolls in like a gigantic firestorm. Jintha, the leader, is incinerated immediately. The vast majority of the Amani trolls are just wiped out. And they're like, oh, fuck! And they lost the war in that one battle. And the ones that are left just retreat to Zulaman, and they're just done. They're broken for all of the rest of their existence. And so, after Lordain actually sacrificed himself in the retreat back to Alterac Mountains because the trolls were getting too close. So Lordain and a couple of his knights stayed behind and sacrificed themselves to delay the trolls a little bit so the trap could work. So
Some of the humans went north and established Lordaeron in his name. And then eventually Dalaran gets established, and all the magic users go to Dalaran. Because even though the magic users were basically the reason that they won the Troll Wars, a lot of the common folk were mistrustful of magic, and they didn't understand it, and they were scared of it. So they went to Dalaran, and Dalaran was like, even though most of them in Dalaran didn't even use magic, they were cool with magic users, and Dalaran was basically unregulated in terms of magic. So as that's going on, Strom, the capital, is slowly being weakened because they don't have any more resources anymore. Kulturas is like wrecking their shit in trade because they have the power of their navy. They can sail throughout the world. They can go to places and find new things. They're just destroying Strom in like economic trade, not on purpose, but just because they're being so successful. Strom slowly dwindles down and eventually becomes kind of a husk. Of his former self. And basically, Gilneas and Alterac ended up combining their armies and led an expedition south to secure their borders. And this is when they meet the dwarves, who had already met the trolls. And the dwarves and the trolls and the humans got along great because the humans were like, look at all this technological stuff. And the humans were like, or the dwarves were like, hey, humans like ale too. They're all right with us. And gnomes were like, we can share our technology with everyone. So they all become fast buddies. But Strom's power continues to wane. And eventually it culminates with most of Strom's noble families that had left departed and went far, far south. They went south past Ironforge. They went south past the gnomes and Gnomergon. Some of them went back up and joined with Lordaeron, and others. Those were the ones that went north, and the ones that went south. Sorry, I got confused there for a second. There were some that went north, and they went with Lordaeron. And they and Lordaeron became kind of like the capital of light and like the holy church there, because that was where most of them were. But a bunch of them went south, very, very far south, led by a member named Faldir. And they ventured far south across the sea. They encountered a lush, unplumbed land where they could make a new beginning. And the last of the human kingdoms I have yet to mention has been formed, known as Stormwind. So, Thoradin's dream of a unified people was dying because humanity had split up after their success. And rivalries began to happen. Descendants of Ignatius Trollbane tried to rebuild Strom. They called it Stromgard, but the city would never regain its former glory. And that's basically Stromgard. And to this day, Stromgard never regained its former glory and basically is a forsaken place now. So, all right, Anthony Levy asked about the Battle of Aegwin. I already explained that, but he also wanted to know about dragon lore. I can answer that. There's not really that much more to learn about dragon lore, but let's go here. I guess the most significant thing we can learn about dragon lore that we just learned from Chronicle is that dragons originally were creatures from the elemental planes. Dragons were originally elementals who escaped the elemental planes and basically, however we want to look at it, devolved or evolved into flesh creatures known as proto-dragons. And that's it. Basically, the only other change has been that they removed they retconned the idea that the Titans themselves empowered the dragon aspects. Before, it was Aman'thul empowered Nozdormu, and Eonar empowered Alexstrasza and Ysera, and Norgannon empowered Malagos, and who was the one for Neltharion? Khaz'goroth empowered Neltharion. They changed that to the Keepers. Who already had part of the Titans' powers. They didn't have the part of their souls yet. This was before that happened, but they had part of their powers, and they are the ones that blessed the dragon aspects. So let's see. I have Ra was the one who had powers of Aman'thul. He blessed Nozdormu with his powers over time. Freya is the one who had Eonar's powers, or however you pronounce it. Eonar, I'm not sure. She empowered Alexstrasza and Ysera. Loken, who the keeper that eventually becomes corrupted and causes all the shit in Northrend. But before he did, he was the arcane user of the group. He empowered Malygos. And finally, Arcades had the power of Khaz'goroth and empowered Neltharion. Yes, Arcades, the guy from Uldaman. His role actually got pretty dramatically increased. But since no one answered that question, I'm not going to tell you how. So, I'll cover it. He basically was just one of the people that traveled and established the forges with Mimiron, and that's basically it. The only other thing is that I don't believe we knew this information beforehand about the dragons, but during a thing known as the Winter Scorn War, which was Loken's betrayal of the Keepers, because he got corrupted, Loken began sending his minions to try and destroy all of the Titans in the area. But what happened was Tyr fought against him with... it was Tyr and Arcades, wasn't it? Let me see. No, it was Tyr, Arcades, and Iron Aya. Iron Aya is that female-looking Titan construct in Uldaman. She's actually, I think she's not a boss you have to actually fight, but she's the woman, like the big stone woman. The three of them are fighting against Loken and his forces, and Loken has employed people like, let's see. He had Vulcan and Ignis, which were two bosses from both Ulduar and then the Five-Man. And Loken's pumping out like Iron Vrykul with his Forge of Wills because he had control of that. And Loken is fighting with Tyr and Arcades and Iron Aya. And we learned new information that Tyr beseeched the dragon aspects to help them. And so Alexstrasza, Ysera, Malygos, and Nozdormu ended up joining in the fight against Loken. And what they did was, the aspects who had been charged to protect Azeroth, they saw the Titans fighting amongst each other, and they were like, dudes, what the fuck? So they learned that Loken was evil, basically, and they were joining with Tyr, and they all fought, again, around Galakron's body, or his bones. They worked in unison to destroy this Vrykul army. Malygos drained all the magic out of like the constructs that were being empowered, so they just died immediately. Neltharion helped too. I don't know why I didn't bring him. He wasn't corrupted yet. Neltharion was raising mountains from the earth and corralling and containing the Vrykul. And finally, Alexstrasza was holding them at bay with her fire. And finally, Ysera and Nozdormu together casted a interweaving spell that would put the whole army to sleep, basically. They created a spell that, a cloying mist is what it's described as, that caused all of the Titan Forge to fall asleep. And when they were put to sleep, they were imprisoned in tombs across northern Kalimdor. And if you might remember, there are a lot of, when you're leveling through Storm Peaks and Northrend, there are a lot of times where you might discover like a tomb. There's a lot of these in Storm Peaks, actually, too. There's like a bunch of like Vrykul who are just like lined up and put to sleep. And that is what Ysera and Nozdormu did. So that's really the only other piece of dragon lore. Let's see. Next couple of questions we actually can burn through real quickly. Anvo Chan is the one who asked about the three pieces of lore I hated and liked. I already answered that. Kennet's another longtime subscriber. Thanks for asking this question. Unfortunately, the answer is not great. Does it cover how certain races came to be, like Night Elves from Trolls and humans from Vrykul? Yes, it's exactly the same as we already knew. Night Elves were once Dark Trolls who lived near the Well of Eternity on Kalimdor. The Dark Trolls were like, man, we don't want to fight like the other Trolls. We just want to live underground and like be cool and chill and contemplate the universe. And slowly the Well of Eternity like made them taller and turned their skin purple, and they became Night Elves. And humans basically were Vrykul, and Vrykul were Titan Forged. So it went Titans to Vrykul. Vrykul then got corrupted with the Curse of Flesh. They became flesh, and then those flesh Vrykul gave birth to humans. Some of their leaders was basically like, we gotta kill the humans, and most of them agreed, killing their own children. But a lot of them were like, no, and so they took their children south, and they established themselves around what would become Tyr's Fall Glades, because they knew about Tyr and they wanted to worship him, and the first humans lived there. Okay, so, but nothing really is new. We learned that the Tauren were actually manipulated by the Well of Eternity a little bit, like I explained, but that's really it. Next question is from Goremonger2. He asks, this is number 13. Do I even have it? Yes, I do. He asks, is there anything about the Drakari Empire in there? Yes, there is, only a little bit, but I will read to you what I have. So, this is around, what time is this? This is around the Empire of the Trolls, which is 16,000 years before the Dark Portal. Basically, what's going on right now is that the Titans have left. The Keepers are trying to keep a handle on the world. Let's see, where am I right here? The Drakari end up fighting alongside the Amani, and the Amani, the Gurubashi, the Zandalari, and the Drakari are all teamed up together right now. And they're fighting against some Sithraxi, like those big guys. And remember how I mentioned Zakaj and Kithix? Well, when Zakaj got buried beneath the ground in Tyr's tomb, Kithix ends up retreating and going to near Ankaraj. And so Kithix ends up trying to take control of whatever Akir are there. He raises like a little mini army of these guys. And so the trolls are all like, we're being trolls and conquering everyone. Go fight these guys. And so the trolls end up coming in contact with Kithix and fight his army of insectoids. Because also the insectoids would like take over the world if they didn't get destroyed. So blah blah blah. Long story short, the Drakari don't really do anything special on their own, but the trolls end up winning. Kithix ends up finally dying. The Akir Empire gets shattered by the trolls. The insectoids are contained far in the north and far in the south, basically in Azul Narub, and then in Silithus. That's the only ones that are left. When before that, they were spread throughout like the entire continent. But the trolls like kick the shit out of them. The Amani are the ones who actually physically killed Kithix. Like the entire Amani tribe with their chieftain, who is not named here, like just launch a suicide attack against them after he has retreated. And while there's only a couple of them left after that, they do kill him. And interestingly enough, they build Zulaman right on top of where he died. So that's why Zulaman is where it is. Kithix was killed right there. So basically that's it. After this is done, the trolls basically split up again, and the Drakari go really far north to where Northrend eventually becomes, and they settle there. So that's the Drakari Empire. Okay. We have 2 questions left, really. This next one is kind of a long one, though, so oops. The next one is from Christ Deckerman, and he asks, anything about the Tol'vir, Uldum, and its Watcher? Yes. Its Watcher was Ra. I've already explained a little bit about Ra. Pretty much almost everything I want to talk about Ra. So let's go here first. Where's this? 14, part 1? Yeah, here we go. All right, let's open up to this. The Tol'vir. The Tol'vir are our Titan Forged race. That's basically it. They were created from the Forge of Wills, and they teamed up with Ra alongside the Mogu and the Anubisath constructs, and that's essentially it. That's really pretty much what it is. They fought alongside Ra against a lot of forces of like the old gods and trying to establish their empire. Let's see. Interestingly enough, the Tol'vir are the ones who actually kill Lei Shen. So let's skip ahead like 10,000 years, and now we're at Lei Shen's rule. And so Lei Shen has already subjugated Zuin. Lei Shen and the trolls, the Zandalari, are basically agreeing to be allies. But Lei Shen begins leading his trolls to the west, and that is where Uldum is. So the Zandalari had heard about Uldum. They'd never seen the place with their own eyes. The Zandalari had sent some emissaries to watch him. Lei Shen basically came to them and said, "Look how powerful I am, I will give you a demonstration." And so all the Zandalari who traveled with him went with Lei Shen to Uldum. And Lei Shen had actually approached the Tol'vir before this and said, "Hey, look, I found Ra. I subjugated him because he didn't want to do it. And now do you want to join me?" And the Tol'vir were like, "Get the fuck out of here. You are betraying the Titans' work and what they wanted. We will never ally with you. We will never give you the Forge of Origination. We will never give you Uldum. Get the fuck out of here." So Lei Shen leaves that and basically says, "Well, I'm coming back with an army." The the Tol'vir are drastically outnumbered. So as they said, indeed, the Tol'vir had known defeating the Thunder King's forces in battle was impossible. So Lei Shen and his army, alongside with the Zandalari, are approaching the Forge of Origination. So the Tol'vir basically have it. Their last-ditch effort is to use the Forge of Origination to destroy Lei Shen. But the Forge of Origination could literally destroy the planet. So rather than using it to its full potential, which would eradicate all life on Azeroth, the Tol'vir had configured the Forge of Origination to scour the nearby lands. And let it be known, right now, in this part of the story, Uldum is like a lush, green, healthy forest because the Forge of Origination is right there, spreading energy throughout the area to grow stuff. So it's a lush, green forest. So basically, Lei Shen is gloating. He thinks he's won this already. His forces are charging. And then the Tol'vir basically go, watch this. They activate the Forge of Origination. It destroys the entire area. Lei Shen dies immediately. All of the Zandalari die. All of his Mogu army is destroyed. Most of the Tol'vir die. The entire land becomes a desert. The Forge of Origination destroys everything. And that's why Uldum is the desert that we see. The explosion was so powerful that flashes all across Kalimdor could see it. I'll read the sentence. When it subsided, Lei Shen and his allies were no more. The unleashed power had also purged the area around Uldum of almost all life, leaving only a cracked and barren desert behind. Pockets of plants and animals were slowly returned over millennia, but the vast jungle would never again regain its vibrancy. The surviving Tol'vir within Uldum worked to ensure no one ever would again to attempt to claim the power. They shrouded the few mountain passes that were left with magic. So this is why Uldum was undiscovered until Cataclysm. This is the lore reason they gave it. After they had beaten Lei Shen and destroyed their entire jungle and basically made it a desert, they cast spells that would hide the passages to Uldum. The Tol'vir's noble sacrifice had kept the Forge of Origination out of Lei Shen's hands and prevented any other Mogu emperor from daring to follow his footsteps. The death of Lei Shen and the upper caste of the Zandalari left a massive power vacuums in both empires. Before the Tol'vir shrouded Uldum in a grand illusion, a handful of the Thunder King's loyalists recovered Lei Shen's corpse and brought it back and interred it into the Tomb of Conquerors. Yet, with most of the Zandalari leadership dead, there was no one to revive the Thunder King. So, basically, Lei Shen came to the Zandalari and said, I discovered a way to bring myself back to life with the Titan's powers. But I don't trust this to any of my underlings because they're going to betray me. And if they kill me, they're not going to resurrect me. So if you help us, we will help you, Zandalari. And also, I will tell you the magic to resurrect me if I ever die. But because all of the ones who knew that basically died when the Tol'vir activated the Forge of Origination, no one was able to do that. So it's actually, this is another one that I really, another little short story that I really like because it explains that the Tol'vir of all people are the ones who killed Lei Shen, and basically by Lei Shen dying and most of the army being destroyed, this is inevitably the reason why the Mogu Empire falls. Because it leaves a power vacuum and emperors keep coming in and killing other emperors, and that's it. The same process happens until the Pandaren rise up and just overthrow all of them. So, that's the Tol'vir. There is a little bit more, actually, that we could do with Ra. Let's open some more stuff about Ra. So, Ra was... where am I at here? So, when the Pantheon came to Azeroth, and they saw that the old gods were here screwing everything up, Aman'thul, he went after, the most powerful old god. And this was Yogg-Saron. And because he did not know yet that the old god's tentacles and tendrils burrowed really, really deep into the world, trying to get to the world soul, like the Void Lords want them to do. If you imagine this is the planet, Aman'thul basically came in and physically plucked Yogg-Saron's body out of Azeroth and just ripped it out of the planet and crushed it. And basically what happened was it almost destroyed the world. It ripped open a giant hole in Azeroth, And the Titans were like, fuck! Because they were trying to save Azeroth. But, like, Aman'thul had ripped a giant hole in the planet. And all of this arcane energy began flooding out. Because the lifeblood of Titans is arcane energy. So in this giant hole where he ripped out Yogg-Saron, all this arcane magic began flooding out all over the place. And the Titans were like, oh my god, we almost destroyed the only world soul that we've ever found besides us. So they decided that for the next old gods, they couldn't kill them. Because if they tried to do that again, they were positive that Azeroth would just die. The world soul would not survive. So what they did is they helped construct like a barrier that would absorb and pool all of this Titan blood, basically, of Azeroth into, drumroll, the Well of Eternity. The Well of Eternity is the pooling of the blood of the world soul of Azeroth that came out when Aman'thul ripped off the tick that was Yogg-Saron from the planet. So they decided to for the next 3 old gods, they had to imprison them, but they couldn't use their own powers because they were too powerful. So they created the Keepers. And Aman'thul created Ra and Odin, and he gave them their powers. Khaz'goroth created Arcades and gave him his power. Golganeth created Thorm and Hodir and gave them the power over storm and skies. Aenar created Freya and gave her command over Azeroth's basically animals and plant life. Norgannon created Loken and Mimiron and gave Loken the power of his magic and Mimiron the power of his intellect. And finally, Agramar created Tyr and gave him his strength and his courage. So, with the Keeper army, the Keepers, they then created an army. They created the Earthen, they created the Vrykul, they created the Mogu, they created Anubisath constructs, they created the Tol'vir, and they used this army to fight the Black Empire, which was the old gods and the elemental lords. And Ra was actually one of the 3 keepers alongside Thorm and Hodir who initially fought with Alakir. And Thorm and Hodir knew how to control lightning and storms, so they used that to force Alakir back to his lair among the skies of Azeroth. And Ra is the one who helped destroy him with the other 2 and once he was in his domain. So Ra actually is the one who came up with the idea to create the elemental planes to imprison the elemental lords there. Because they knew they couldn't utterly destroy them, because the elemental lords were primordial forces of the planet. So even if they destroyed Ragnaros or Alakir or Therazane or Neptulon, they would inevitably come back. So Ra called upon the Titan-forged sorceress named Helya, and together they created the elemental planes and banished each one of the elemental lords to each plane. Helya, as you guys might know if you're watching my Legion content, inevitably becomes tied up with Odin, and they become fighting with one another, and Helya gets cursed and becomes the first Valkyr, and she ultimately is in Helheim, the underworld of the Vrykul. And if you're watching my leveling playthrough, you've already seen her. So that is where Helya comes in there. So finally, there's a little bit more about Ra to do. Like I said, they really expanded the role of the Keepers. Ra specifically got so much more lore. Let's see. I guess I could go more specific into what Odin and Helya were doing. So, when the old gods and the elemental lords were defeated, basically, the Titans had left. Or not yet. They had empowered the dragon aspects before they left, and then they left. And Odin basically said, I don't think the stewards of the world should be these dragons, because they were once elementals. So why should we give the power to steward this world to these creatures? I think only Titan-forged constructs should be the guardians of this world. More specifically, the Vrykul, because I like the Vrykul and how strong that they are. So even though he was technically the leader, he was the prime designate, he basically told them all to screw off and said, I'm going to make my own army. You have fun with these stupid dragons. I want nothing to do with this. He takes Helya with him. She willingly joins him. And she has Helya rip off a chunk of Ulduar, send it up into the sky, and magically enchant it. And that becomes the Halls of Valor. And then basically, Odin lets out a declaration to the Vrykul and says, "Hey Vrykul, I am Odin. I know you already all worship me, but if you die in battle and you're a great warrior, you will become one of my immortal Valajar, my immortal army in the heavens, and together we will be the ones to protect the world." But Odin needed a way to get the dead souls to the Halls of Valor. So he was like, I have a great idea. I'm going to make some of these Vrykul into these spirit creatures called Valkyr. They're going to serve me and bring souls from the Azeroth to my to my Halls of Valor, but they're going to be basically cursed for all of existence, having to do this job that no one wants to do. Helya basically told him, that's a terrible idea. No one's going to volunteer for it. No one wants to do it. That's stupid. Don't do this. And surprise, surprise, Helya was right. None of the female Vrykul wanted to do this. So Odin basically said, I don't care what you want. He forcibly took a bunch of them. He took Helya. She turned him into the Valkyr. Helya was bound to Helheim to help ferry souls up to the Halls of Valor. She had no choice. Her free will was taken away. She hated Odin ever since that day. And then cut forward like a long time to when Loken becomes evil and tries to destroy the other keepers. Loken basically goes to Helya and says, hey girl, I know you hate Odin and everything, so I have a great plan how we can like remove him from this equation. I'm going to give you back your free will, so here you go. And since you created the Halls of Valor, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to seal Odin in the Halls of Valor with your magic so he can never leave. And Helya's like, sounds good to me. I hate that shithead. So she does that, and that's why Odin is stuck in the Halls of Valor. And that is basically the story of Ra. I went on a tangent about Odin there, and that basically was Ra. And as I already explained, Ra went into a depression after getting Aman'thul's soul and basically gave up. So there's 2 questions left. Last one is from Jesper Ruse, another longtime subscriber. Thank you. He asks, is it worth buying? The answer is yes. Short answer, yes. Long answer, yes. I bought mine for, even though I don't like a lot of the retcons, I bought mine for $24 on Amazon, I believe, right as the recording of this video. You can still order it on Amazon. I know it's backlogged, but if you order it now, you'll still be able to keep the price. If you try to go into a bookstore and order this like Howie did, you'll have to pay full price, $40 for it. I would say $40 is probably not worth it. The art, but if you can get it like on sale or for $24, get it. Even though I dislike a lot of the lore changes, the art alone is like amazing. Like this picture of the duality of the universe where it shows like there's Holy, it is resisted by Shadow, and there's the Burning Legion and Fel, and they're resisted by Arcane and Order and the Titans, and there's Life and the Wild Gods, and they resist Death and the necromantic magic. I would love to just have that as a poster. So yeah, last question. Of course, it's a doozy of a question, and it's nothing about what's actually in the Chronicle. It's from Kale XXC, and she says, screw these weak questions. I'm going to make you work for those $2 of ad revenue. Thank you very much. With the revelation that the Titan Keepers have fragments of Titan souls inside of them, do you think Wrathion is going to go after them? He and Ra are the only ones that know about them at this point, and Wrathion presumably has Aman'thul's fragment from Lei Shen, given that he received the same vision that the other Keepers did. Do you think Wrathion will start a soul fragment collection to power himself up, or will he try resurrecting the Titans in some other way? Perhaps he will be the one capable of taking down Sargeras. Will they retcon the soul as being the reason Wrathion created the Draenor plan, since he has the powers over time? Here's hoping for Wrathion having a badass cinematic where he uses Aman'thul's power to push back the Legion. That would be great, but here is what I think he's actually going to do. Because Wrathion is not evil, he may not have our best interests at heart, but he's just trying to save Azeroth. He knows, I would assume, so he definitely knows that the Titans are dead, because as we see from the cinematic in Mists of Pandaria, he has that famous quote that no one knew what it meant for a long time until now, where he says, we must rebuild the final Titan. I don't think Wrathion's going to go to the other Keepers and basically steal their souls because the way it's described in Chronicle is, even though all of the fragments of the Titan souls went into the Keepers, there's like no indication that no one knows how to like resurrect them. Norganon, when he cast that spell over the Keepers as they were being killed by Sargeras, he just did it as like a last resort, because if they all died, there was like literally no chance for any other planet in the universe. And they believe that there were other world souls besides just Azeroth. So, here's my theory of what's going to happen. We have Wrathion in Legion. Spoiler alert, he's in High Mountain. Spoiler alert, he managed to secure a bunch of uncorrupted Black Dragon eggs. Spoiler alert, he's going to reform the Black Dragon Flight, in my opinion. I think... So some more spoiler alerts here, too. There's some kind of event that happens in Dalaran in Legion about halfway through the leveling process from what little data mining stuff we can figure out. And at some point, somebody attacks Dalaran and steals all of the pillars of creation. And while people initially think it's going to be the Burning Legion, because I believe what the plan is, Gul'dan's trying to get his hands on the pillars of creation, because he already has the Eye of Aman'thul in Suramar, because the Eye of Aman'thul is in the raid where you fight Gul'dan, and it's the thing that's creating the Nightwell, which is what is empowering the Nightborn. So, and we know throughout all the leveling process in Stormheim, God King Skolvald and the Legion are trying to get the Aegis of Agramar there. This is one of the pillars of creation. And we know in Val'Sharah, Xavius, under the command of the Burning Legion, secures the Tears of Elune. So that's 2 more in addition to the Eye of Aman'thul. We know that in High Mountain, the Drogbar have the Hammer of Khaz'goroth, and there's not really a lot of Legion stuff in there, but I think they're probably going to try and get that one at some point. And then finally, the one in Suramar, which I can't remember off the top of my head, the Naga are the ones trying to get that one. And it remains to be seen if the Naga are going to be fighting against the Legion or if they're going to give it to them for some reason. I guess it'll really depend on what Azshara does, but my whole point is here. I think the Legion is going to try and use the power of the Pillars of Creation to bring Sargeras to Azeroth. But I think, and there's not really a lot to back up my theory here, but if I'm right, I'm going to be like amazed. I think that all of the Pillars of Creation, if you have all of them, you might be able to like complete or awaken the Titan of Azeroth, wake up the World Soul, and become cognizant, and be able to fight against the Burning Legion. And we know from Chronicle that Azeroth is arguably the most powerful Titan World Soul they've ever found, of course, because it's Azeroth, and it has to be the MacGuffin that will save us all. But I think that Wrathion will try and secure the Pillars of Creation after we stop the Legion, at least in the temporary moment, to awaken the World Soul Azeroth. So that is what my theory is, because I would really like to know what like the extent that Wrathion knows about like World Souls and the Titans. I wonder, because it seemed like he was getting a lot more information in that cinematic than just we must rebuild the final Titan. So that is what my theory is. I'd be happy to hear what your theory is. I don't think they're going to retcon any of the Draenor stuff. I think that storyline, even though it's stupid, it makes sense in the context that they made it in. There might be a cinematic where Wrathion like either sacrifices himself or he successfully like fights off some forces to secure some of the Pillars of Creation, and then he'll be the one that crafts it together, because he also has what? He has the power of Leishan in addition to Aman'Thul's soul. He has the staff that contains the power. He has all of these sigils from Pandaria, and those are all Titan stuff. Like the sigils the sigils of power and whatever the other one was. Those were all Titan stuff. So he has those. He has what else does he have? He has, the Black Dragon Flight is going to be rebuilt. So I think he's going to try and take all of this Titan, because he's been collecting Titan stuff. I think he's going to take all this Titan stuff and try it, put it together, and awaken Azeroth. Whether or not he does, I don't know, but that is what my theory is, and that is how we're going to end this 2-hour-long video. If any of you guys even watched this for so long, maybe keep it in the background. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think about any of the stuff that I brought up here in the Chronicle episode. I've been really like talking with my hands a lot because I've been sitting here for 2 hours just talking about this. So until then, I'll see you guys next time. Make sure to stay tuned for more Legion Alpha content. Let me know what you thought about any of this, and I will see you guys next time. All right? All right. Thanks for watching. Stay awesome. And yeah, farewell.